Hey, Unruly Subjects, it's Chinjirai, and I need your help to keep the show going strong. If you love what we do here, consider supporting us by joining our Patreon community. It's the best way to back the show, and you get some incredible benefits in return. Membership starts at just $5 a month. I mean, there's nothing that cheap, at least in New York. And you immediately get ad-free episodes and exclusive premium episodes. That includes interview outtakes and other extras you ain't gonna hear anywhere else. But that's not all. You can access the Unruly chat and polls. When we have a live event, you're gonna get the pre-sale tickets and the merch. Oh my God, the merch. You know the merch is gonna be fly. And you receive invitations to our Q&A live streams and, my favorite, our annual exclusive hangout with me, the producers, and a special guest. So yo, come on people, join the Unruly mob. Visit patreon.com/unrulysubjects. And thank you for making this show possible. Row Home Productions. All right, so before we get back to partying, we just want to take a few minutes to set our intentions for this new year. So let's just go around and share what you're focusing on this year.
I'll start. As a lot of you know, I've wanted to go to Disney World for a long time, and this year, I'm finally going. I already got tickets.
All right, good for you. How about you, Cliff?
Well, I've been meaning to fix that deck for a while now, and I think 2026 is the year. So I'm pulling out my tools.
Okay. Chinjirai, is there anything you want to focus on in the new year?
I have a podcast.
I'm sorry, could you speak up?
I have a podcast, a new podcast.
Oh, that's disturbing. What is this podcast called?
It's called Unruly. It's called Unruly Subjects, and I'm not ashamed of it.
Well, we are ashamed.
A podcast? I'm ashamed.
I mean, aren't these podcasts places where Joe Rogan talks about sports?
No.
And sex?
No.
And socialism?
Well, yeah. But I mean, we're not gonna be like you guys talking about decks and Disneyland. We're gonna talk about important stuff like movements and ice cream. And you know what? I don't care what you guys think anymore, because Snoop Dogg says I'm a winner. And I might not be the big winner, but I'm a podcast winner.
What up, y'all? Happy New Year to all the winners. You know what I mean? And everybody else. You know what I mean? We all in this boat together. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Oh, man, we got another banger this week for you. And I can't wait. Look, I got to say, look, I missed y'all. You know what I'm saying? I really missed y'all. But I also want to say it was nice having a break. I mean, I missed you while I was having it, but just to say, it was good to just kind of, unplug for a minute. You know what I mean? But one thing that did not unplug was the news. It kept happening. Reality kept happening to us, people. You know what I'm saying? There's Venezuela. There's what's unfolding around Iran. ICE is completely out of control, escalating in terrifying ways, And then here in New York, we got this week, nurses are on strike. Shout out to the nurses, you know what I'm saying? Saw the mayor was supporting them, you know what I mean? But yeah, reality keeps happening. The news keeps happening. And so the thing I keep coming back to is this, right? For our purposes here of staying educated and, thinking about how this information relates to social justice, staying informed is important. But I think it's how we talk about it, right? How we analyze it. What other stuff do we need to do to catch up to understand what's happening today? That's just as crucial, right? Especially when so much of what's hitting us is coming through social media. You're seeing Reels and TikTok and YouTube, the whole shebang, you know what I mean? So the question really isn't, do I know the headline, right? The question is, do I have a framework for making sense of the headline? And that's why today's conversation is with George Conscious Lee. You know what I'm saying? That's right, I'm not playing. We heard a little bit from George before, but he's really one of the best at doing political education in the fast-moving social media environment, right? There's plenty influencers out there who are just pushing nonsense and chasing clout and attention. And, we don't have time for that. But there's also a lot of content creators who are doing good work. So shout out to the content creators. You know what I mean? And George is definitely one of the best when it comes to helping people connect the dots, ask better questions, etc. So I can't wait for y'all to hear this conversation with him. So George is going to be our main interview for today, but we're also going to have a special guest who's going to join us to set up our hotline question about work. So I want y'all to hear that. We're going to do a little bit of news, and of course, we'll hear from my daughter, Yola, before it's all over. So let's get into it. When it comes to Venezuela, I know by now you all are well into the story that Trump has, essentially invaded Venezuela and kidnapped Maduro, the leader, and is holding him on charges here in the United States. Basically, I'm not going to say too much about that right now, but we are doing some deeper kind of reporting because I want to understand some things better. And two of the things I just want to forecast that we're looking at. One is the role of the geopolitics of oil in this, right? Real quick, Trump has made it clear that this is largely about access and leverage of oil. So we're going to talk more about that. That's all I'll say. And I'll say it doesn't just involve Venezuela. It involves some of the surrounding countries, Guyana, Brazil, etc. Secondly, I want to really think about how we regard someone like Nicolas Maduro, who is kind of a controversial figure. And I think that, one of the very complicated questions is how do we maintain a real indictment of what Trump has done, violating justice, right? I mean, there's international law, but as we know, international law and justice are not always aligned. So we want to be able to condemn Trump and in no way excuse what he's doing or act like he's doing it for the benefit of the Venezuelan people. But we also have to be able to raise some critical questions about Maduro. There's critiques of Maduro from the left. And I think on this show, I want to have the nuance to be able to hold both things. But that requires something more than just like breaking news, headlines. So we're going to come back to you with more on that later. What I really want to talk about right now is ICE. I'm sure you've heard that Renee Nicole Good, a 37-year-old American citizen, was fatally shot by an ICE officer named Jonathan Ross in Minneapolis on January 7th. Now, this killing has provoked massive uprisings, and that's a good thing. But this was not the first person that ICE has killed. There was also Silverio Villegas Gonzalez, who was shot back in September, right? He's a 38-year-old person from Mexico. And of course, if you look at this case, you may have some suspicions about why it is that we haven't really heard about Silverio Villegas Gonzalez case, but we have heard about Renee. But either way, I just want to take a moment. Like, these are lives that have been lost. Renee Good had just recently moved to Minneapolis. She had children, I think was a mother of 3. And she's gone now. These are real lives now that are being taken with no due process and no accountability by an organization that's being called law enforcement. And shortly after Renee Good is killed, right, you have the Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, stands up there and immediately lies about the video and then lies about Renee Good. Here's the main thing I want to say about ICE. We need to stop calling this law enforcement, right? News outlets do it as a matter of standard business. They just throw it out. Politicians repeat it. They say ICE is a law enforcement. Even when they're kind of criticizing it, they still call this institution law enforcement. This is not a law enforcement institution. They're not enforcing law. They're breaking laws, first of all, systematically. All the evidence, the stories you've seen is showing that these people are routinely breaking laws. And the idea that they're enforcing immigration law is also absurd. So many of the cases that we've seen from them are people who were either going through immigration properly, people who weren't even, like, their citizenship isn't even in question, and they didn't break any laws. And these are the, at this point, there is documented evidence that a lot of what's going on is they're just finding people who are brown, and then they go after these people, and sometimes in very violent ways. So what part of that is law enforcement? Please tell me. I know we're used to using that term. Show me the empirical evidence where this organization is enforcing the law. And if you can't find it, we need to find another term for them. We can call them paramilitary organization. We can call them a deportation force. That I agree with. You want to ramp it up. You can call them a kidnapping operation. But let's not feed into this propaganda of calling them something that they're not actually doing. And a second point I want to make is that we're now seeing the results of sustained organizing. Part of these strategies are to make people feel hopeless, like nothing we're doing is having an effect, but it is having an effect, right? The National Guard has been kicked out of different places, and we're starting to see communities are more aware of what their rights are. This past weekend, we saw massive protests that rose up in response to what happened to Renee Good. And I think we're sort of like on the verge of having a very historic block that can push back what's happening with ICE, right? And this includes electoral leaders and people like that. So, part of why I think it really matters strategically that so many people are rejecting this organization is that we might have to start forming coalitions and working with people who we don't see eye to eye with. But if they have the ability to put in place laws to slow down and raise the costs of this, we got to take those actions and keep that momentum going. Third, I just want to say about ICE that we really do need a historical perspective on this organization. The practices that they're enacting about immigration are actually not new. The organization itself is new, but what they're doing and the rhetoric around immigration is not new. It goes back hundreds of years, and I think that that's important to understand. It's also important to understand that really the problems with ICE are very common problems to police. And I'm going to talk about that. Policing is an important part of my work, and the history of policing is with Empire City. So I'll talk more about this on Newsfeed. So you can head on over to unrulysubjectspodcast.com and let me know what you think, and we'll go a little deeper there. Unruly Subjects, it is now time for this week's hotline question. Yes. All right, and we got a good one this week. This week, I want to talk to you about work. Have you ever had a job or like a role where you were like, yo, I think my job might be kind of like a scam, you know what I mean? Or maybe like this whole company is sort of a scam, you know what I mean? If you've ever felt that weird feeling about your own work, the hotline is 215-436-9212. It might be that you're just like, yo, this could be done way easier or more, you know what I'm saying, or more efficient. I remember having some jobs like that where I was looking at like Excel spreadsheets and was like, this just it felt like busy work. Or maybe the job is just really alienating and not important for society. Like you're doing it, but you're like, yo, this job is actually not helping anybody. You know what I mean? And I think it kind of feels like this whole setup is a scam, even though you probably, we need these jobs, right? It's like, yo, it's paying me, but I'm conflicted because I feel like I'm doing this work because I need it, but it's something's wrong here. This isn't what anybody is meant to do. If you have ever felt like that, or you feeling like that right now, call 215-436-9212. Yo, I went out to look for an expert who could really deepen our understanding of this. And yo, I didn't realize that there's like a whole book on this. I mean, I know the smart people are like, Chinch, there's tons of books. There's hundreds of books, of course. But I mean, I'm talking about like, there's a book called Fake Work, How I Began to Suspect Capitalism is a Joke by Leclerc LeBerge. And this is an incredible story. It's a riveting story, right? Almost like a memoir of a part of the author's life where she talks about how she, found this job and became deeply embedded in the fakest, most, kind of strange, absurd kind of work, and how this whole journey she went on actually prompted her to think about capitalism and its fraudulence, right, in a lot of different ways. And it's just a really, really interesting book. And the author, Leclerc LeBerge, has graciously agreed to come on the show and break it down for us. And she's here right now. Welcome, Leclerc LeBerge.
Thanks for having me.
Leclerc LeBerge is a professor of English at Borough of Manhattan Community College, City University of New York, and author of Fake Work, as well as Marks for Cats, a radical bestiary. You got to check that and the videos associated with it. It's great. Her writing has appeared in Texas Kunst, N+1, Harper's, and the Los Angeles Review of Books. So when I was describing that experience of work, I mean, I know because I read the book, you found yourself in a similar circumstance. Could you talk about first what that felt like?
Yeah, I had a job, very sort of prestigious job from all appearances, working on a team of management consultants for a large corporation. And, I took the train in from Brooklyn, 55 minutes into Midtown Manhattan, walked into a skyscraper, went up to the 24th floor, sat at a cubicle without natural light, and compared Excel spreadsheets and took notes about when I noticed a difference. So the spreadsheet might say, this company has 89 PCs, but the database might say 98 PCs. So I would write that down.
I don't mean to laugh. I'm sorry.
You can laugh. It's okay. And then at 4:30, all of the analysts who were doing this quality assurance work of comparing Excel spreadsheets would meet at the photocopier to photocopy our day's work. And that those photocopies were bound for a New Jersey warehouse because they were considered a sort of crucial form of knowledge. Because this was all done in service of preventing a Y2K computer meltdown.
Right.
But when we met at the photocopier, we would talk for about 30 minutes. And just having human contact and, seeing other people's faces, that was a real sort of highlight of the day. The managing director would come in and he would say, well, team, the news about Y2K is getting worse. Like, we gotta, this is what balls to the wall. That's what he would say.
Oh,
it's getting worse, balls to the wall.
Right.
And we got to keep going. We just got to keep going. And sometimes the legal director would speak and he would say, team, on January 1st, 2000, the world is going to be inundated by a flood of lawsuits like you've never seen. And the only thing we're going to have is these records, these paper records. So keep documenting. Keep documenting. And so that was the idea, that the more documentation we produced for this firm, the better it would be able to defend itself in a future lawsuit. Of course, the lawsuit never came, and the event that was supposed to cause it never came. And I really think by the time we as a team were waiting for the descent of Y2K at the very end of 1999, there was an awareness that there was nothing there, that nothing was going to happen. But just as with the work we were doing, no one talked about it. But more than the actions which consumed my day, which were, for all intents and purposes, ridiculous, I felt each day I entered work and I left work each day with a kind of profound ambivalence. And that became the basis for the book that you mentioned, Fake Work.
Thank you for breaking that down. Could you tell us more about how you even arrived in this context of fake work?
Yeah, when I graduated from college, a liberal arts school, it was 1998, and it was the middle of what gets called in retrospect the dot-com boom. It was this moment of the beginning of the commodification of the internet. And, I had been a philosophy major in college. I couldn't have been more far from the business world if I had tried. But these narratives, these stories, these ideas that I could be successful as a business person, as a businessman, that I could make money, that I could accrue, both actual capital, but also the social capital that comes with being a part of corporate America, of an elite faction of corporate America, had been very infectious to me. So I moved to New York. I interviewed for a bunch of .com jobs that I did not get. The line was, even a chimpanzee could get a job like this. Well, I couldn't even do that. But I did get a job. And, within a few weeks, there I was checking spreadsheets with Ivy League grads. I mean, I was not one. But these companies, they employ the best and the brightest. And me, I don't know if I would call myself the best or the brightest. But I was there and I was a witness to it.
It feels like at that moment you felt like successful, right?
Completely.
Yeah.
And the funny thing was that the job I had was so surreal because the moment was so surreal. The historical moment was so surreal. Preparing for a global computer outage that never came. A project organized by a management consulting firm that 2 years later would be indicted by the federal government and forced to close for fraudulence. This was Arthur Andersen. This was the same firm that was auditing Enron. I mean, the whole situation could not have been more fake if someone had set out to construct it as such. But nonetheless, I believed, I persevered, and I did end up getting a lot of meaning from it, but it was not the meaning I sought to get.
No, and I think that's really important because I think that, often when people form radical politics, there can be a kind of smugness that sets in. But in reality, there's so many of us, I'm going to say the us, who are still trying to grapple with this. We want meaningful work. We want to be successful. We want people to recognize us. We want to, we want some of the nice, we want to be able to, have a little bread and go out to a nice restaurant. Like these are things people want, and we're in it, and we have to endure this. And I think that your book really lays out that journey, and why actually this kind of thinking has to be, I think, a more central place in our thinking about radical politics and how people form politically. So we want you to call the hotline, 215-436-9212. If you recognize any piece of this, holler at us. Let us know what your experiences are. And Lee Claire has agreed to come back on, and we're going to process your voicemails and respond to them. But just to put a finer point on it, how might someone know if they're in what you call fake work, a version of it?
One way that you would know is that you have a sense of an inner conflict because there's an awareness that what you're doing doesn't really need to be done, and you're aware of it and other people are aware of it, but it's not articulated. And that feeling of ambivalence doesn't have an outlet in the work itself. And this lack of ability to name and say what it is you're doing while you're doing it, this feeling of desire that you're not getting what you hope to be getting from work, which, let's be honest, it takes a not insignificant portion of our life. That's what we will spend doing, is working. That should be a key that perhaps some element of your work is fake.
Absolutely. All right, y'all. Please check out this book, Fake Work, How I Began to Suspect Capitalism is a Joke. I promise it will make you understand that you are not alone. Lee Claire Laberge, thank you for joining us this week on Unruly Subjects.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure.
What's going on, Unruly Subjects? How you feeling? You know what I'm saying? Yeah, we in it. Listen. One of the things I've been thinking a lot about is social media, and how, despite the fact that social media is horrible in so many ways, there are people who are doing really creative and important political education work on these platforms, right? So I want to first of all give shout out to the social media folks who are doing that work. You know what I mean? And I noticed that a lot of the stuff people are doing on social media is really creative. It's very timely because the pace of social media means that people can respond sometimes faster than other places. And honestly, it's actually nuanced sometimes, in ways that you don't actually get from official outlets. So I've been reaching out to folks who do this really well, and I got to spend really the whole day with one of the best in the game, George Conscious Lee. You know what I'm saying? If you've seen his work, you already know. He responds in a timely way to what's going on right now, but I think his work goes a lot deeper than just like breaking news. You know what I'm saying? He brings in history. You know what I'm saying? He brings in analysis, and he does it in a register that a lot of people can relate to. Just to give you a quick taste, here's a clip where he's talking about 3 political candidates in Texas and their actual positions on ICE, right? And immigration enforcement. Not just what they say, but he's talking about what you should be listening for and what questions you should be asking.
When it comes to abolishing ICE, the only person that's down with that is him right here. These two right here, they believe that ICE is automatically qualifying character for us to have policing in America when this goddamn place right here only been around since 2003. So you have to ask yourself, what were we doing with immigration enforcement before 2003?
And here's another example, right? In this clip, he zooms out and gives a grounding history of U.S. intervention across Latin America and the Caribbean. So when something pops up, like in the present, like what's happening with Venezuela, you actually can recognize the playbook.
This is a map that illustrates all the United States-backed coups in South America. They invade your country, impose their puppet, loot your mineral resources, and then turn around and blame you for being poor.
And here's another clip where he's talking about something that we definitely don't hear enough men talk about. He's talking about gender violence.
We understood that this is a pattern, a history of gender violence that we all have all too familiar with. It's not seen as a gender war. until the people that are facing the violence start to push back. Very similarly to the way in which power and domination also acts in backlash when we start talking about race, because we're going to be intersectional throughout the whole conversation.
So anyway, y'all, I'm so glad that George Lee accepted our invitation. And after the break, George Conscious Lee. This episode of Unruly Subjects is brought to you by Haymarket Books, which has loads of great left-wing titles, perfect for listeners like you. And one that I know you're going to feel is The Extended Universe, How Disney Killed the Movies and Took Over the World by Vicky Osterweil. A provocative history of Disney's rise to cultural dominance, The Extended Universe pulls skeletons from the corporate closet to decode the political messages hidden in all your favorite childhood movies. In The Extended Universe, Vicky Osterweil takes us on a quest to discover how Disney's Imagineers have made it impossible to reflect on the wonders of growing up without thinking of Disney's movies, amusement parks, and merchandising. Drawing on extensive interviews with filmmakers, screenwriters, union organizers, and Disney adults alike, Osterweil unearths reactionary political commitments and maleficent legal maneuvers so cartoonishly evil they would make one of Walt's own animated villains blush. As Natasha Leonard puts it, Osterweil is the brilliant, generous, and revolutionary guide we need to rethink cultural production today and kill the mouse inside our heads. Find The Extended Universe at haymarketbooks.org, where all hardcover books are 10% off every day. Unruly Subjects is supported by listeners just like you. Join us at patreon.com/unrulysubjects. All right, Unruly Subjects, we have in the building George Conscious Lee. What's going on?
Hey, man. Hey, glad to be here, man. It's lovely to be here in the great, beautiful city of New York, man.
Yeah, I'm like, we are so excited. You know what I'm saying? When it comes to political education with the impact, we can navigate, you know what I'm saying? The nuance, keep us up to date on what's going on. You know what? I don't know if it's any better.
We out here, man. Education is elevation. If you don't do politics, politics will do you. So you might as well learn how politics work and learn what's going down with politics. I love putting down for my fellow Southerners. I know that some people hear that Southern drawl and start to think about that plantation, and maybe you start to negotiate one's intellect a little bit. So I'm hoping that I can be, a trailblazer in many different ways that make you put some respect on a Southerner's name, especially when it comes to, political education and thinking about the ways that white supremacy, try to box us in.
That's 100% right. We don't play them games, up here. We understand that, as the scholar Robin D.G. Kelly has taught us, the Black freedom struggle in the South really was the cutting edge Black freedom struggle period in the United States. And if you don't understand that, you're really missing out. And I would even go further to say that even today, the extent to which we are missing out and not really attending to how folks is getting down in the South, you're actually missing crucial lessons, crucial strategies. You know what I'm saying?
Definitely.
So thank you for taking the time to talk to us. I think a lot of us encounter you via, on social media. I'm seeing, it's like I see you pop up, in front of some news, and I'm like, uh-oh. You about to let me know there's something I think ain't what I think it is, or, something I need to pay attention to. But I wanted to get a little bit more into whatever you were able to share about yourself, your own journey. How did you become George Conscious Lee?
Man, to be honest with you, I think that the bubbling development of who you see right now was already taking place before I got into college. When I was in high school, me running through the streets of Bryan, Texas, having parents that experience, incarceration here and there. Some parents that, battle with drug addiction, parents that, battle with being in the streets, and hustling. Made it a lot of my survival skills and tactics and experiences, I feel like they really enforce a lot of my perspectives. When I got into college, though, honestly, one of the best things that happened to me in my life is me walking on to the University of Oklahoma college debate team. Like me walking on to that policy debate team, me learning about research, me getting more into politics, me getting more into theory and philosophy, having to defend my ideas, being forced to think on my toes, being able to travel around the country. That really changed how I view myself and how I view the world. Or really, I would say it's changed. I feel like it's strengthened in more ways than some, and gave me the portable skills to be able to say what I mean what I say, while being able to politically, socially, economically get into all the various implications, man. So definitely shout out to all my people that has done debate, whether you was a policy debater, a PF debater, or a parliamentary debater. You know, debate got its different facets and flavors, man.
Right.
Of course, I'm a policy debate, you know what I mean, a person. So I think policy debate is the better form of the debates. But, you know, shout out to the entire debate family.
Why? And was that something that you specialized in when you were studying debate? Was policy debate, or did you grow into that more recently? And also tell us why you think policy debate is so important.
I walked on to the policy debate team in 2010. So some of the first topics I got into as a policy debater was around the visa system, around immigration. So shit, I know more than the average American about the immigration process, about the visa system, about the quotas, about the different type of visas you can receive, all because of the topic education I was forced to research while talking about the visa system. Another topic I learned about was democracy assistance in Bahrain, Tunisia, Egypt, Lebanon. So I learned a lot about, you know what I'm saying, the countries, a lot about American hegemony, a lot about American international, you know what I'm saying, politics on that topic. And it's different topics I was forced to learn very deep on it. So I know more about presidential war powers than the average American does. You feel me?
I mean,
like these are all topics I was forced to really get into.
That's amazing, because I feel like that depth is precisely what's lacking in our dominant political discourse. And that ain't just among, ordinary folk. I would say even when you watch some of these so-called liberal, like these pundits and some of these people who claim to be the adults in the room and the people who are given the platform, you sometimes realize they ain't really got the range. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, I've been in the conversation, man. Recently, man, I was on TikTok, and it was this young gentleman that wanted to have a conversation with me. You know what I'm saying? Involving my engagement with a politician, and we got into the live stream. And what I say, it took about 10 minutes for me to realize this is a waste of my time. Not only is it a waste of my time, you don't really have the range to really have this conversation. You don't have the maturity either. I'm consciously, quote unquote, big, this, that, and the other. So I don't really have much to gain from this conversation. But I understand if I let your ass have it the way I want to, it's going to be a spectacle, and more of a spectacle than I can, really need. So I say all I have to say is that a lot of people have been able to fabricate being an expert because social media lets you jump your expertise to whatever's trending. And because that happens so much, we ain't got real respect for expertise, or we have a way that we want to always, in bad faith, challenge the person that we view as being the expert. And that's what I find as being the quote-unquote consciously on social media. A lot of people either A, just see me as a fast-talking nigga on the internet that like talking about politics, or B, you know what I'm saying, you want to, you see my degrees, or you know of the degrees, you know of my debate background, so now you just want to engage in this contrarian type energy because you want to prove to yourself, really. You feel me? You want to use me as a proxy to prove to yourself, and it's like I don't know in that world where we're able to have productive conversation that leads to Black folks' liberation, that leads to inclusivity, or that leads to engaging understanding. And that point now we is engaging in like a clickbait shit show. You feel me? For visibility.
A clickbait shit. Listen,
we ain't got time for it, fam.
Say less. You know what I'm saying? Now I want to delve into that a little more, because you're actually navigating a really complicated terrain in exactly the area you're talking about, which is you're doing this in social media. It's where the algorithm seems to rule. It's where hot takes from people who don't know what they talking about seem to rule. And sometimes, takes by people who are educated. Shout out to the content creators. Yeah. Shout out to the smart ones, you know what I'm saying? But I guess what I'm wondering is, how do you make choices? How do you navigate that? Because what I see you doing that is really, I find amazing, is navigating, for one, the thing you're talking about, which is bringing some real depth and critical thinking and nuance to the topic. Two, figuring out where to kind of show up in ways that actually will have some impact and not be involved in a whole lot of monkey shit. You know what I'm saying? But then the other thing you're doing is you're also cutting through to audiences who are really skeptical about expertise, who are skeptical. I mean, rightfully skeptical in a way, I think, of mainstream outlets. I think it's good to be a critical thinker, right? And I never want to like hate on people because they're trying to think critically about media. But those could be the same kind of folks who could be like, you know, I'm not really here for all that, and they may not necessarily have the trust to go engage a little longer. And, you know, like I said, sometimes for good historical reasons. This media has done a lot of violence, for example, to black people. So I get it, you know, and there's been a lot of violence done in the name of expertise by people who claim they're the experts, and them was the same people who was, you know, passing oppressive policies, locking us out of things, calling people stupid. You know, so you're navigating all those things. I guess my first question on that note is, what about when you're talking to those skeptical people? Why do you feel Conscious Lee cuts through where someone else, maybe even someone like myself, wouldn't be able to hold somebody past 30 seconds into the education?
I think that people find me to be relatable. I think because I talk with the Southern drawl and I go in and out of code switching with the ebonics and using academic jargon, I think that it's an entry point for people to relate a little bit differently. And I also think that I try to ground and contextualize what I'm talking about in shit that's very accessible. So a lot of my content is around me talking about political or really pop culture, social things that's trending, and figuring out a way to politicize them or showing how they are infused or how they are structured by politics. So whether we're talking about, you know, Tory Lanez and Meg Thee Stallion, or we're talking about, you know, Donald Trump, you know, making an accusation towards P. Diddy, or we're talking about, you know, the crazy shit that Stephen A. Smith said, I think politics and race is everywhere. So usually I try to show, you feel me, how it's there. And what I find is that...
Oh, I just want to slow down because you said something I thought was so beautiful. You said you're taking pop culture and showing people how it was structured by politics. That's, I just think, such a great way of saying that.
It's really the method for the madness keeping it stacked with you. Like when you see me come across your timeline, I'm thinking about what is the historical, political implications behind this and how did we get here? How does power impact or how does power infuse this situational issue? Whether we're talking about sexual violence, we're talking about imperialism, we're talking about submarines full of billionaires blowing up. How does this tell the story about power and domination? Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And what political decisions, policies, politicians, you know, who had their hand in this? Because what I believe, whether it's a tragedy or whether it's, you know what I'm saying, something for us to really celebrate, somebody benefiting and somebody coming to a disadvantage, or somebody has a perceived advantage and disadvantage. And that's kind of what I'm interested in. You know what I mean? I'm a student of Huey P. Newton. You feel me? And he said that power was the ability to define the phenomenon and make it act in a desired manner. I'm really a nerd on the phenomenon. I want to know how this shit work. You feel me? I want to define the phenomenon politically, socially, economically. What are the historical ways that this shit came about? You know what I'm saying? Like that's what I'm interested in. And I think that what I found is that when I first started building this platform and it first started taking off in 2019, I really accepted that most people really love education. You just had a shitty educator. And because you had a shitty educator very early in your educational journey, you universalized that particular experience and you made it seem as if that's all your experiences. So what I think people like with me is that I'm able to, at least for a few seconds, give you a complete different orientation towards education that you didn't think you had.
Wow. No, and that's how I feel about history. A lot of my work, you know, I started out in the game. I made a podcast called Uncivil. It's about the history of the Civil War. Yeah. We won the Peabody for that, you know what I'm saying? You know? Shout out to you know, where I made Scene on Radio, the history of whiteness. And then we made Empire City. And all of those are like deep historical dives. And what I realized that it was millions of people who were hungry for that. And a lot of them were white folks. You know what I mean? That's why I sometimes joke and say, like, I actually think, you know, Trump and all these other people, DeSantis and all them, I'm like, y'all actually don't believe in white people.
They don't.
Because y'all think white people are snowflakes who can't handle real history. But my inbox, your inbox is full of white people who are like, I want to know the real. I don't want to be the one left out. So that makes so much sense. But I want to switch gears for a minute. If you can indulge me on this, here's what I want you to do. I want you to put on George the Debater hat.
Yeah.
And I'm going to put on a hat of someone who feels you, but is a little skeptical of some of the things you're saying. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, so and you have I'm saying put on the George debate head. You have permission to ether me right now.
Yo, I'm ready, man.
All right, you ready? All right, here we go. We enter the segment. Here we are. George, I feel you when you say, pop culture is structured by pop. Why you got to make everything political? Can't I just listen to music sometimes or just watch a movie and just enjoy that? Why you got to make every you mean tell me like I'm living politics all day long and politicians out here, I can't just have some things are like I feel like you're making it too deep.
I would just ask a question and say, what specifically have I said that I over-politicized or I made deeper than what it was? And I would right now defend why it is structured and infused by politics and why you the one that's tripping and not me.
Well, I mean, like, I feel like I hear you saying things about people like Nicki Minaj or Pharrell or they entertainers. You know what I'm saying? They just trying to do the best they can, and I feel like we should just applaud them because they doing a good job. I mean, they may not know everything, but why do we have to kind of like break everything they doing down?
I use my example, man. I'm somebody that was exposed to a lot of big picture ideas through media. And because I had access to thinking about, Outkast talking about bombs over Baghdad, that them making a song that had political implications is how a lot of people get exposed to what we're talking about. I think that if you're a public figure, you should always already be thinking about how your visibility is tied to politics. So when Nicki Minaj is able to go to UN and talk about Nigeria and talk about Christians in Nigeria, that's obviously political. You know what I'm saying? When you're able to mobilize a group and you call them the Barbs and they're able to do your dirty work and or amplify you, that's very political. You feel me? Even this, being a black woman in hip hop, I think that Nicki Minaj and all the Barbs would agree with me and say that position is inherently political.
That's
so you see what I'm saying? Like so to me, it's like your beef is not with me bringing up things are political. Your beef is with probably your ignorance around how everything is political, or you feel like you have no power around how everything is political. And I think that's a separate conversation. But I feel like having an issue with me pointing out that water is wet. And maybe you didn't see the moisture, but I'm showing you the moisture. That's a personal problem. You know what I'm saying? That's like a personal problem, and it's a problem that can become communal if you don't allow for it to. If you can't adjust with how it's sitting in your personal. Like, hey, fam, music is political.
You might have got me on that one. You had to stop the clock, stop the debate clock. I don't really know how it works. Okay, you might have got me. Okay, I got one more. I'm gonna ramp it up a little bit. All right. You talked about how debating was important, policy was important. But I feel like these policies been the same, my whole life. These politicians don't help us. And I'm like, why is debating it important? Like, we need action. You know what I mean? Why is it debating instead of action? Like these politicians keep doing the same thing, whether they Democrats or Republicans. They're not helping us, whether it's Joe Biden or George Bush. I mean, I get that Trump is worse. But I mean, now Trump is out here like actually kidnapping people and all that. Why should we debate policy? I feel like maybe the policies don't matter.
Man, my motto is education is elevation, and I think context is important. Right now, I'm in New York City. I know this is like the home of Broadway, right? So I'm thinking about Hamilton, you know what I'm saying, and thinking about the various debates and dialogue that happened that was a prerequisite to policy. So when we talk about debate and policy, it's important to understand that there is no policy that we have in America that is not a product of debate. So even if you feel like, what's the point? The point is that's the starting point. The entry point to talking about politics, legislation, issues, is always about a competing interpretation of ideas. And if you're willing to debate about MJ or LeBron James, you should be able to think about, you feel me, this political issue that gives your grandma affordable insulin versus this one that does not. That's you should be able to think about that. You know what I'm saying? That's just, I feel like, to me, politics is like who gets what, when, where, and how. That's everything. Who gets what, when, where, and how. And it's just, when we're talking about politics, policy is usually able to put in black and white. Who gets access to, you know what I'm saying, livable wage? Who gets access to health care? Who don't get access to health care? Who get access to quality health care? Who get access to the bullshit health care? To all these conversations and questions of politics. So if we don't think about the language, the ideas, the value, the narrative that brings about policy, which is debate, then we really lost in the sauce of policy. You know what I'm saying? Even right now, all of the white supremacist policies that's been passed around, taking education from black people, has acquired because these people have concluded in believing that critical race theory is bad. There was a debate about critical race theory. They called it a culture war, but shit, they was able to win. So they was able to pass legislation that say anything tied to black history could be DEI or it could be woke. We're gonna pass it's bad now. That's because a debate was had. Now me and you, was the debate, did they win the debate? Hell no. But to me, one of the most important things I learned about debate is it's a game of persuasion. A lot of the debaters have a hard time figuring out their debate career in college because they think being right when you a debate.
Right. Like, how do you actually, what's the difference between just dumping a bunch of facts on people and actually persuading someone?
The persuasion comes to the call of action and what's the implication of it. If I say, you feel me, the sky is blue, that's a cool FYI. But if I say, the sky is blue, which means environmentalism is real, and because environmentalism real, the sky is blue, we should always think about how the different variations of the sky being blue, how it matters. So now I'm giving you an impact. I'm giving you why it matters. I'm giving you the everyday is it. I'm giving you why it matters and the impact. This matters because, and this is what it impacts. To me, that's the value in being able to have development argumentation skills and having the portable skills of being able to debate. A lot of times on social media, people say they don't like debate because it's really just whataboutisms. It's really content forming. It's really shallow bullshit ways of trying to make hot takes and slam dunks. It's not really about argumentation development, and it's not really about being able to find a stasis point. You see what I'm saying?
Right. Let's actually slow down right there, because that seems like one of the hardest things to tackle, and which is the whataboutism. Could you define whataboutism, and then could you talk about how you deal with that when it's hard to get anybody to even land or engage a point that they just been proven wrong on?
Topicality is a traditional argument in debate that says that if you affirmative and I'm negative and you have your black ass up there and you start making an argument that I don't think is topical,
right,
I'm going to have a complete strategy to force you to tell me why what you're talking about is topical. So on social media, if me and you are talking about trans women being women, and I'm debating you about trans women being women, and you start talking about some random obscure thing about pedophilia, I'm going to force you to find the internal link between pedophilia and trans women being women. What's it got to do with this, man? Like, what is now? You got to bring it back. As a debater, as a debate coach, you feel me? We teach our debaters, and I was taught to always be able to bring back the center and always be able to defend my argument. The whataboutism is a horrible attempt of making a link argument that doesn't really link. In debate, you just say no link. You feel me? No link. They say this, no link. My argument is this. Like almost like a beauty pageant. You feel me? You get up there, they ask you a question. Right. You talk to always bring back up your platform. Right. So we debating, we arguing about imperialism, and you tell me about how this other country is better than America. I'm telling you that American imperialism is bad. You give me a whataboutism about another country imperialism, it's not an entry point to the conversation.
What about some of these countries where you don't even have the right to speak?
What about, how does that country negate what I'm saying about imperialism here? I'm gonna put the ball in your court. If it doesn't, that does not matter. It sounds like to me, my argument is so good, you're trying to bring up a deflection point. It's another reason why I know you're losing.
And this is why I want to really turn the conversation to journalism, because I feel like I sit there and listen to the news all day, I'm sure like you do, and I just watch journalists sometimes take L's, well-meaning journalists.
Oh, yeah.
But they take L's in the discussion, and I'm like, you shouldn't have did that. But what's your advice? What would you say, having, given your experience, given the communities that you come from and relate to, what would you say is your advice to journalists to say, look, respectfully, I think y'all need to get a little sharper on this?
To me, being honest with you, journalism has a very mythological relationship to neutrality and objectivity. My beef with a lot of journalists is that you have a very utopian-like orientation and even idea around being neutral and objective. I think that for me, you know what I'm saying, I wasn't trained as a, a capital J journalist in the School of Journalism, right. But I understand, confirmation bias. I understand implied, bias. I understand the way that, our personal shit can come in.
Right.
I feel like, a lot of journalists believe that if they can display a performative idea of neutrality and objectivity, this means that their legitimacy around being a journalist is good. And for people like me and people that's on the internet that like my shit, they view that as being illegitimate. Not trustworthy. When I got invited to go to the White House and they're telling us about how the average American listens to TikTokers more than they listen to traditional media, they doing that, I think, because of how traditional journalists that's been trained in journalism, how y'all play games around neutrality and objectivity. I'll be willing to put my debate skills on this one. I think I'll be willing to show any journalist why I'm a Hall of Fame debater and busting your ass on why neutrality and objectivity is not only a myth, why a lot of us do ourselves a disservice, I would argue, in engaging in it, because all it does is prop up power and domination in a way that keeps it invisible. When you was talking about the power of whiteness, Dr. George Yancey, he was a professor at, Pittsburgh. Now he at Emory University. I read a lot of his work about whiteness and about how whiteness is most powerful when it stays invisible. How whiteness wants to stay, unnamed. I would argue that journalism is structured by the unnaming or the invisibility of power in terms of whiteness. That's how we're able to always have different ways of legitimacy in terms of class, ability, gender, race, all that shit, because you play neutral objectivity and all it does is play up social norms. These social norms ain't neutral and objective. They always already put an advantage on certain groups while putting certain groups at a disadvantage. When journalists play the neutral objectivity game, all it does to me sometimes is really, I would say sometimes, I would say even half the time, it's like, shit, all you doing is now widening the gap of the have and have-nots, or widening the gap of illegitimacy and legitimacy. And I think that that's just something that I'll be willing to have a deep conversation about neutrality and objectivity, because I understand from a very critical educational standpoint that these two concepts is something that I know in journalism y'all deal with. I know these are two concepts that I know when you in your classroom and teaching your students, these are two concepts that you have to grapple with.
Absolutely.
And for me, that's the beef to me. To me, that's the elephant in the room.
That's very well said. And what's interesting is, when I first came into a journalism department, I figured that maybe that was something that I wasn't sure how much journalists had thought about that. I mean, I had read some of the works. There's some incredible work that tries to navigate through this. It's interesting that you're using the term objectivity and neutrality. Some of the best work I've seen basically says the game is to be objective in the sense that your stuff is based on actual facts, but not neutral. Sometimes when
you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I like that distinction. I like the nuance. I like the nuance. I concede that.
You see that? Okay, but I think a lot of journalists would agree with you in principle, in the abstract. But now when it comes into the actual work,
the execution of the work,
sometimes it still kind of feels like the same thing is happening. And quickly, not to detour, but to your point too about whiteness, one of my first pieces that got circulated widely was a piece I wrote called Vocal Color in Public Radio. And I was talking about how behind the ideas of professionalism in journalism, whiteness was actually there.
Oh,
and not just whiteness, patriarchy, right? Regional issues about
to me, patriarchy is whiteness. Like when I say whiteness, I'm talking about the modes, the ideologies. Like it's just simplified it.
Right.
Was that idea brought over by European colonization? Yes, that shit is whiteness. And what we know is the colonizer brought various different ways of living.
Right. But I guess I'm really impressed with the way that your skill at debating has allowed you to navigate some of these pitfalls in discourse, really, right? Like what you encounter. Like I'm realizing, like, yo, I was like, yo, how can I get so good at this like George? But you helped me to realize I probably need to take some debating classes. I need to get my debating game a little sharper. You know what I'm saying? What are some resources for people, who are out here and want to take advantage of that to be able to, get a little sharper on the debate game? And ways that it can help their other work. Maybe their work as organizing, maybe their work as educators, maybe their work as journalists.
Man, my former debate coach, he had this critical debate handbook by Jackie Massey. If it ain't available, let me know. I'll make it available. Goddamn. Really, I think that just the art of communication and any books around argumentation and just getting multiple different perspectives on how people feel like you're supposed to be an effective communicator and how to persuade. For me, debating, I learned, of course, from experience, like, you know what I'm saying, doing debate after debate after debate after debate. But I would say just start with a topic that you that you care about, and explore as much as you can on that topic. In debate, we had this concept called switch side debate, where you learn both sides of the argument. And what I find in being a critical debater, a K debater, is that there are usually 5-6 sides of an argument. So, on a particular issue, topic, maybe racism, sexism, ableism, or shit, it's about, a particular, a historical event. Like, go explore those topics, explore those different perspectives. And I feel like now you're starting to get into debate. Because really, debate is just about competing ideas. And you feel me, competing ideas where you got receipts and research. You know what I'm saying? Like, almost just like understanding the difference between experience-based and evidence-based. Like, I ain't saying experience don't matter. You feel me? Experience obviously matters. But experience don't outweigh evidence. You feel me? Like, maybe you've experienced flamingos. You've only experienced flamingos.
Right.
That's important.
Right.
You've experienced birds that don't fly.
Right.
But evidence tells me that goddamn it, birds fly.
Right.
So if I use your personal experience to try...
Right.
See what I'm saying? Your personal experience don't negate or outdate the trend. The trend say that birds fly.
One way that I think this really relates is, I got people in my life who have been able to sort of like, kind of almost like pull themselves up from their bootstraps, right? Like their own personal experience is that they went to school, they might have got a job at like a bank,
it's great
and now they got bread.
Great for them.
So from their experience, they're like, that's possible. And all this other people talking about social justice and all that, that's all not really that important. The only thing really important is to chase your paper. That's basically, what they believe. And what's tricky is their experience validates that.
Yeah, I'm very sympathetic.
You know what I mean? It's like they're like, look, you can't tell me, I lived it. I did it. And I'm looking at people who are making bad financial choices. So now you're saying...
I respond back to that.
I know, right?
Definitely respond back to that. Like, listen, fam, you cannot conflate your individual decisions of responsibility to the realities of institutions. Your individual journey and experience does not negate the way this institution is made. Simplified in terms of individual example. Hey, as a black man, I've never experienced police brutality. You can't tell me I've experienced police brutality. I've never experienced it. Does this mean that police brutality don't exist? Hell no, it don't. So I would tell your family member, they smoking dope and dog food if they believe their individual experience negates the overall institutions in a way it impact people. So because you was able to get it out the mud, and because you was able, that mean everybody can. To me, that's like almost just like you're not critically thinking, and that's one of the glass ceilings that capitalism wants to do. If I can do it, then man, ain't trying that.
But okay,
like,
now, to be fair to them, they would say, I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm saying economics is the only strategy.
I would still say that is not responsive to me telling you I have not experienced police brutality, but police brutality exists. What you just said is not responsive to what I just said. What you saying, hey, you know what? It's important, but it's not necessary for me to engage with that. Like that, what you're saying is true. I don't have to negate that at all. I don't have to negate that at all. Yes, I don't have to negate that at all.
Economics is important.
I don't have to negate that at all.
But it doesn't address these other systemic factors.
On God, it don't.
That affect the masses of people.
Hey, even if you in the bench stood nigga in the coop, if you know the story of Lorraine Hansberry and Raising of the Sun, if you know all, there's no way for you to, like, come on, that's not, to me, it's what I would call cruel optimism.
Woo, woo.
And cruel optimism is bad, especially for black people.
You go. That was a book reference too, by the way, y'all. Just for y'all, and I'm saying, who know the codes and layers of this. You know what I'm saying?
It's layers to this. It's layers to this, man. And be honest with you, man, I think that it's a lot of shit that pissed me off. You know what I'm saying? I built this, a lot of sacrifices, blood, sweat, and tears. This platform, I built it. I'm not a nepotism baby. I built this brick by brick, follow by follow. So when folks play with me in my name, I want to come for you. What you mean? What you playing with me for? Ah, shit, let's do it. I'm at a point now, my platform too big. It's too many people talking shit about me. It's too many arguments. They're bad, but it's too many to respond to.
So what I hear you saying is not only are you having to make a choice about just the lies that's out there about the world, you're saying at this point in your level of influence, there's all these things being said about you specifically.
Hey, when I type in my name, consciously exposed. The biggest thing I see people like to talk about is this woman by the name of Brick Lady got hit by by a man. She said she got hit by a brick. The man really hit her with a bottle. I said I defended her. Niggas mad about that because she got convicted. You know what I'm saying, of scamming or something, but she did get hit by the dude. Niggas mad at me about that. And my biracial wife, that's sometimes Filipino, sometimes she's Mexican. They choose every week, you feel me, identity for her. She's biracial, half black, half white, birthed by a black woman, raised by a black woman. But if I wanted to explain my wife's identity every time somebody said something about me, bro, I wouldn't make no other videos. I would only be explaining my wife's identity. You see what I'm saying? Or somebody wanted to, I had somebody make up a whole lie and said that I said that Kamala Harris should never be voted for ever, and I said Jill Stein, and I said fuck black women. I don't have you know my content, so you like, what the hell? Who said that? You see what I'm saying? Yeah. Now, it's important for me to be like, hell no, I ain't say that. But for the people that matter, it's not necessary for me to engage in that. Man, since you're right here, bro, why are you talking? What the fuck going on? Bro, what's going on? Why are you? That's not important. I don't need to engage. You see what I'm saying? So I'm having to make decisions. I'm having to make decisions every day. Every day, personal and professional. Personally, professionally, did this really matter? Personally, professionally, I know it might have hurt my feelings or it may, you know what I'm saying, make me feel heavy or give me anxiety. Personally, professionally, does it really matter though? How can I how can I figure out a politic to determine whether this shit is important or necessary? And I can be real and say it's a journey every day, fam.
And not to go to chess, because chess is sort of like an overused metaphor.
Yeah, I don't know how to play chess, so it ain't work for me.
But well, when you do, one thing you learn is like you gotta ignore a lot of threats that come at you.
Swear to God, you do.
You know, because people will bait you. Yeah. Everybody's trying to bait you, so it's
everybody trying to bait you. Consciously get baited. Right now, if we've been talking on this podcast for 40 minutes,
right?
Guaranteed in the last, not even saying an hour, in the past 40 minutes we've been on this, I can go on any platform and see somebody pump faking, hoping that I come in for the block, or somebody will be doing debate. With debate, we always made fun of the opponent. You're not prepared. You came in here, you threw a whole bunch of shit at the wall and hope something stick. You don't have an argument to prepare for me. You have to make a whole bunch of arguments and hope I mishandle one or I don't respond to one and go for it. But you don't really have no arguments for me. I deal with that every day. Every day somebody threw the kitchen sink at me hoping I caught something. Because you got to think about it. If you piss me off and I say something to you, my 5 million followers is going to want to go see what I'm talking shit to you and want to see what you said.
Right.
That's the game. So now the game is, how can I piss the big content creator off to make them traffic their people to my shit to make it where I can get some visibility? Because we live in an attention economy. So anything can be seen as a way to get attention. Right now, it's all about negativity, and that's what really incentivizes people getting a reaction. And I can say I'm guilty. I can have 1,000 comments. I can have 900 comments telling me I'm the best thing since sliced bread. Nigga, 100 of them comments talk so bad about me. My brain went to the 100 comments talking negative and missed over the 900 talking positive about me. So I'm feeding the attention economy while I'm incentivizing folks to be ugly and disrespectful to me because that's what I pay attention to.
And you know, it reminds me a little bit of the rap game because you know I'm a hip hop artist, and I would see how people would make choices about who to respond to because they realize like if I respond to this, I'm actually helping this person.
Oh God,
you know what I'm saying? More than I'm helping the game, the culture, or myself. You know what I mean? I'm helping I'm actually helping my enemy destroy me. You know what I'm saying? Or someone who's just unproductive. You know what I mean? So but I think what you said, I really appreciate that on that note, and I want to close on that note because I think, you know, there's a lot of talk about self-care and all this, but I'm going to put what you said kind of in a little bit in the saving your energy bucket where it's like, that's a really good thing for us to be thinking about in terms of political strategy and collective care, which is like, don't respond to everything. You ain't got to respond to every single thing. Think about what's important. I hear what you're saying. Develop your argument. Don't stay in the reactionary, side. And I think those are really important lessons for all of us. That's important for me to remember because, look, I be on here. I fall down the social doom scroll like everybody else. I mean, I tell people, I'm like, even when I'm talking to organizers and activists, I'm like, we're going to do a lot of things about social media on Unruly Subjects because I'm like, yo, just because you're a brilliant activist and you're out here and committed, these people put billions of dollars into this algorithm and into influence on our brains. And if you think we are impervious to that, you know what I mean? You're wilding. So anyway, Unruly Subjects, please give it up for the brilliant, the committed, conscious league.
I don't even know what you asked me. It made me get a little passionate, but definitely I can feel the monster in me. Like, Don't get me started.
Don't even come on, man.
But,
Don't even come on,
listen,
man.
we gonna need I need to come back another hour. I'm telling you,
hey,
man.
listen, you know, we all for it. All right, y'all. That was our conversation with George Conscious Lee. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. But now, before we close the show, there's been a lot of talk about our new mayor, Zohar Mamdani. You know what I'm saying? At this point in the game, I'm still applauding the mayor. We'll see. But, you know, there's also another really important political leader that's emerged in New York. And recently, I was really fortunate to get an exclusive interview with this leader. Describe the situation.
I'm the boss of New York City, so I am the boss of everyone, even the boss of you.
Basically, y'all, what happened was this morning while I was getting in Yola dressed for school, she, unbeknownst to me, she snuck into my closet and got one of my suit jackets and put it on. And then she let me know who's boss.
This special jacket gives me the power to be the boss of New York City.
Oh, man. Okay. All right, big boss. Well, what are you going to do?
Well, I boss people around. That's my job, yeah.
Okay. Why does that jacket make you the boss of New York City?
This jacket has special powers to make me the boss of New York City.
When I listen to this tape, it's like, yo, how do our kids get these messages about clothes and what they mean? Like, I mean, I occasionally wear a suit jacket to certain things, you know, but I don't think I ever said like a suit jacket means your boss, or I definitely never declared myself as the boss of New York City. So somehow though, she's picked this up, and it's just wild how, you know, yeah, man, I guess the streets is always watching, you know what I mean? But most importantly, we have a new leader. So I guess we'll be in touch about what that new leader's relationship is to our current leadership structure. If you have questions about that, feel free to hit us up on the hotline, 215-436-9212. If you have things you want this leader to try to do, let us know. Unruly Subjects is supported by listeners just like you. Join us at unrulysubjectspodcast.com. Unruly Subjects is produced in partnership with Rohome Productions. Boy, I'm proud of Rohome. Alex Lewis is Rohome's creative director. John Myers is Rohome's executive producer. Big shout out to my wife, Sadika, my daughter, Yola. Shout out to my assistant, Carissa. Shout out to Lee Claire LeBerge, you know what I'm saying? Author of Fake Work, How I Began to Suspect Capitalism is a Joke. And yo, don't forget to call our hotline, you know what I'm saying? 215-436-9212. Tell us about your experiences of fake work or weird work. Shout out to George Conscious Lee. Appreciate you so much. Our theme music was composed by Axel Kakutier. Alex Tutusian made our tile art. If you love this show, make sure you subscribe, follow us on Instagram, Unruly Subjects Pod, and you can follow my Instagram at Chinjarai. Tell everybody you know about this show, and we will be back next week with another incredible episode. I can't wait for y'all to hear this conversation about voting rights. Y'all know Trump is trying to mess with these elections, and woo, definitely want to stay tuned next week. See y'all then. Rohome Productions. Unruly Subjects is supported by listeners just like you. Join us at patreon.com/unrulysubjects.